musicians tended to be. This is the beginning of them being incredibly glamorized and stuff. I mean, that's well, it's a bit later actually. That's sort of with Madonna and Michael Jackson and having a much stronger image around the band. The Beatles didn't have even though they were so huge, they didn't have much image. They or if they did, it wasn't a constant image. They changed it and rearranged it. It wasn't and it certainly wasn't a plastic or false image, which you could certainly say that Madonna had, and that's interesting. Mid-70s, Queen had huge influences from just all rock and roll really. I mean, and they became absolutely huge, and that was great for sexual equality in music, because lead singer Freddie Mercury, fantastic frontman, fantastic singer, also I think eventually openly gay. So that was good for just good for equality all around basically. Power tube distortion helped with much louder distortion levels, and all sorts of different harmonic effects could be created out of a guitar. So that was another string added to the electric guitar's bow, and there was all sorts of things associated with that. This was all at the same time as the oil crisis, so there was a lot of financial worry at the time, and financial worry is or financial problems. They seem to good music seems to happen in times of financial woe, which is interesting. I suppose when everyone's rich, everyone just gets complacent and doesn't do anything interesting. Perhaps not. I don't know. Bruce Springsteen became very big. Born in the USA. Born in the USA was became a massive anthem for a lot of America, and a lot of America didn't realise it or didn't quite comprehend its sort of sardonic lyrics and its sort of skewed look at American life and American culture, which it's a very interesting song with very interesting lyrics, and I think it was Ronald Reagan used Ronald Reagan came in the 80s, but he used Born in the USA. He played it at rallies, and not realizing at all the actual aim of the lyrics, which was a sort of stab at the American ideals and things like that. Bob Marley, in the middle of the 70s, he was a great advocate of peace and love, and openly smoked marijuana, and that was the media weren't so harsh on him because he didn't swear lots, but he was nonetheless, he was criticised for his open drug use, even though it was just marijuana, and everyone was doing it. Pink Floyd, 71, I think, released The Dark Side of the Moon, which completely blew everyone out of the water as a concept album. It was sort of the most seamless and well produced and well imagined piece of, arguably one of the most seamless concept albums, or it was the first concept album really. So that was great for progressive rock music, and I mean, it could be argued that the White Album was the first concept album, but most people cite Dark Side of the Moon as the first big concept album. Hip hop starts around 70s, 71, 72, and that became very big. And again, that was another separation thing between the old and the young, there was lots of tension. Adults didn't really get it, and still don't, which is interesting considering they've grown up with it. I suppose it's Marmite music. Margaret Thatcher, 79. Margaret Thatcher, I think. So that was the beginning of conservatism in the UK. There were lots and lots of job cuts and lots of budget cuts, and the Margaret Thatcher was very very harsh, very partisan, I suppose, with her worldview, and wasn't too big on acts like well, she certainly wasn't very big on rave or Nirvana or Pearl Jam, or she probably loved to take that. Sex Pistols, mid-70s. That was sort of the beginning of punk. Punk was a very rebellious thing, and that was just an offshoot of the separation again between the old and the young. So that was the most extreme aspect of that particular cultural mainstay, I guess. So punk was deliberately badly executed, shouty sort of music. I mean, the Sex Pistols were great, and they were heavily involved in drugs and all that sort of stuff. Everything that annoyed the grown-ups, essentially, which is great. The Aubenheim 4-voice polyphonic synthesizer comes out in the middle of the 70s, which became an essential for progressive rock bands, and would eventually be involved in all sorts of electronic music like house, techno, rave, and all that sort of stuff. Sampling started to happen in the 70s and 80s, and that was part of hip hop. You'd cut up a track that you liked and sample, speed up, slow down, or reverse, or whatever you wanted to do with a sample, and just play around with it, and then lots of songs were made with certain samples in it. I mean, the Aim and Break was probably, I think, the most sampled thing of all time, and just a drum loop that everyone seemed to love for some reason. The Prodigy used it. Countless people used it. Hendrix jams with Cream. Jimi Hendrix properly comes onto the scene, and just becomes this. Well, I think he was already very much on the scene, but he came onto the scene, and everyone was just blown away by his fusion of blues and rock and roll. His seamless, the way he seamlessly brought them both together in this huge wall of sound. He used a wall of Marshall amplifiers, which is the first time that had been done. Just a wall, for a ridiculous lead sound, essentially. So Michael Jackson was busy doing Jimi Hendrix was busy doing his thing with just making sounds that had never really been heard before. He had a very prolific tech man who designed all his pedals for him, most of which are in mainstream circulation now. But he had them first, and there were all these sounds that Hendrix was using, and his tech man had I think worked with the Beatles as well, and so there was lots of swapping ideas and stuff like that. So that was important for the progression of new sounds, and Hendrix inspired thousands of people to just mess around with guitars and see what you could do with them, set them on fire. In the sort of 80s, beginning of the 80s, John Lennon is assassinated, and so is Gandhi. This is so two huge